Yeah, I signed up to a Catholic
Okay,
priest.
interesting.
So the Catholics would affirm free will. They would affirm that there are things that are predestined, as with pretty much all Christians. So, for example, God in his foreknowledge knew that man would ultimately sin, fall short of the glory of God, and that he would choose to send a savior to take on the atonement of all mankind, both their present, past, and future sins. So knowing that knowledge and choosing to act in a state where there is no creation, there is no time, in effect is predetermining things. Do you sort of see what I mean? So the fact that there was no situation in which Jesus would not have been sent.
Or is it like ongoing or continuous something? God's actions are ongoing.
So since God is sans creation, he's outside of creation and outside of time.
Okay.
All his choices to act in the world are already known, right?
By God.
Yeah, and through his foreknowledge and his power, he knows what man will truly do, and he knows what his answer is to it. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So, like Augustine talks about that, for example. Augustine talks about how.
Yeah, I think
things of which.
I think I would probably be kind to Augustine's view on free will. I think it would be very similar to the Sunni position.
My understanding is the Sunni position
okay.
is there is no free will, like not in a
okay.
a way that can be defended.
Interesting.
It's just simply that Allah has predetermined all things, but you do in some sense have some freedom. But they can't describe what that is because it isn't freedom as traditionally understood by the classical perspective. So if you look at the classical understanding of freedom, it's defined as the ability to have done otherwise, right? So like when I choose to drink Coke,
like you have a
to
choice.
do that freely, I must have been able to have chosen not to drink Coke or to have chosen Pepsi.
Yeah.
But if Allah determines all events, then necessarily speaking, I have to have chosen Coke. If that's what he had chosen. And that seems to be the proper understanding of
that tends to be quite a reformist, a Calvinistic view.
Yeah, that is a Calvinist largely. I'm not a Calvinist. Calvinism is a subsect of the Protestant branch.
Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah.
it's not really that main, not that big. I mean, there are Calvinists, but not many.
I mean, my view is that God's omniscient. He knows everything.
Yeah.
All actions or abilities take place by God giving you that ability to perform that act. But the free will is that you have a choice of how to use that ability.
Okay, so can I ask you, in the Quran it says that God creates you and what you do, or what you make.
I see.
Now, so for example, Ibn Kathir's tafsir on this, he seems to be of the view that, it means that not only are you, and me, and him, and everyone here, created by God, but also our actions. God creates them. My understanding, at least from the Athari position, is that yes, Allah does create everyone's actions. And my understanding is this is called occasionalism. Have you heard of the philosophy of occasionalism?
No.
Give it a check when you get home. My understanding is that in terms of Kalam philosophy, Muslims, at least through the medieval period, understood that God creates all causes and actions. So for example, if I got a match, and you know how you strike a match against the rough side and it turns into flame, well, occasionalists would say it's not that the match has sulfur, which in and of its nature is flammable, and if you hit a rough surface, the friction causes it to light. They wouldn't say that. They'd say, no. It's just that Allah wills the match to set aflame at the exact moment when you strike it, and the fact that it happens to be when you strike it is coincidence. It's that Allah is the one who generates that action.
I mean, I would interpret that to mean that God permits things, God permits things in the world, but it doesn't mean that He approves of all things. So He may allow evil to some extent, but it doesn't mean that He approves of it.
Well, from my understanding,
but in terms of the match,
is from Him. So, I mean, I don't want to be crude about it, because obviously you're very respectful and I don't want to be pointing things, but
fine,
everything good must come from Allah, but also everything bad must come from Allah, in a very direct sense.
I mean, there's something similar in Isaiah, though, in the book of Isaiah. I think it's Isaiah chapter 45, where God says, I create good and evil, and it all comes from me, or something to this effect.
It depends on the translation, because the translations that you read, there are some that I think more accurately excuse me, translate that word, and the more accurate translation is destruction or calamity, rather than evil.
Okay.
So I would go with that translation.
But be that the case, I still understand that like God allows or permits evil, and people cannot perform any action without the ability given to them, and that ability comes from God. But God's given us a choice, like He's given us the free will
So
of
your
how to
actions
use
you
that.
generate.
So we have free will how to use that ability. So we have a choice of how to use the ability, whether to use it for good or for bad.
So when you use your free choice
Yeah.
and you come up with an act, an event, a cause, you're the one that generates that. Like you're the one that originates it. Because, for example, say me and this guy are having a chat, and we want to decide what we're going to have to eat. And I say, I want a chicken dinner.
Yeah.
And he says, no, I want chicken nuggets. Ultimately, only one of us can win out on that, right? The only other alternative is that we always agree. You know, whenever I say I want a chicken dinner, it's like, yeah, chicken dinner. And when I say chicken nuggets, it's like, yeah, chicken nuggets. But my understanding really is if Allah just predetermines all things, then there has to be a way in which my will and his will merge. Because otherwise he has to have precedence. Otherwise he's not really determining anything. You know what I mean?
Determine could be understood in terms of God chooses the gender of a person. He chooses like what eye color or the race or ethnicity. So that we don't have a choice, but that's determined.
I agree, but I'm talking about free will as just classically understood about the things that we do have power over. So like if I got a little hammer, and I hit your knee, your knee's going to move, right? You didn't choose for your knee to move.
Yeah.
But it's a response of the body.
Yeah.
That's determined. That's not something you have free choice over. But from a libertarian free will perspective, there are things I believe, and Christians generally, apart from Calvinists, believe that you have free will over. You can choose. So I could choose to do good and love and to serve my neighbour, to give charity, to go to church, to partake in the liturgy. And there's the bad that I could also choose to do, go and hurt someone or whatever that might be. But we believe that God, in his nature, because we would say God has a nature, in his nature is good. It is nothing bad. So another way of looking at this that I find confusing is, does Allah have a nature? Is Allah good? Or is it just that whatever Allah wills is the good?
So Quran refers to Allah as being Al-Muhsin, the source of goodness, or the one who is good. So it's one of the God's names and attributes. But in terms of like permitting evil, God, like in the Quran, there is free will in that for belief and disbelief. So the Quran says.
I definitely agree that the Quran implies free will, because there are many things in the Quran that seem to say you have a choice. If you choose this, you will be rewarded. If you choose this, you will be punished. I think that's all over the Quran. My issue is that having looked at some Muslims who do hold to a strong view of Al-Qadr, they think it is pure predestination. They say no, even in the Quran. Like there's a verse in the Quran, I think it's in Surah Nazam 53 maybe, it says something like, there is nothing that will come over you, no calamity that will come over the believers that Allah has not permitted.
Right. But that's not something you're responsible for. So like natural disasters like hurricanes or earthquakes, that's not within your control.
Well, I think the tafsir that it's generally looked at is the idea that you can't do anything. This is supported in hadith. You can't do anything to change like the outcome of like good things or bad things. So there's a hadith where I think it's Abu Hurairah. He's saying, Prophet, I struggle. I'm worried that I may commit adultery. Should I castrate myself to ensure that I don't? And Muhammad says, look, what is written is written. The ink on the pen is dry. What is written for you to do, you will do. So why it doesn't matter if you get circumcised or not.
Yeah, so that wouldn't make sense in terms of the Day of Judgment, which the Quran speaks about. And the purpose of Day of Judgment is people are basically rewarded or punished for their actions in this life. Whereas if a person didn't have free will or free choice, then they wouldn't be able to be judged, because they're just simply, carrying out what they've been programmed or predestined to.
I definitely agree.
And with the hadith, you do have sectarian hadiths as well. So not to say there weren't like Muslims who had the kind of
I am listening.
Absolutely.
I'm just trying to find a hadith for you.
Nah, yeah.
Just because there's something.
So you have different groups using different hadiths to support their school of thought.
Right. Well, you ultimately
In
have to
terms
live
of
in
the
Qadr,
Quran.
right? Because those who deny Qadr are like the Qadariya.
It's to do with your definition of how you define qadr.
It seems to me the early Muslim understanding is that, yeah, Allah predetermines all things.
So the earliest understanding would be from the Quran itself, because the Quran is a collection of what the Prophet preached.
Yeah.
So from the Quran it says, whoever wants to believe, let them believe, and whoever wants to disbelieve, let them disbelieve. So for example, in Surah 18, verse number 27, so people have a choice whether they want to believe in the Quran or not, or disbelieve in the Quran, or be Muslim or
I
reject.
do absolutely agree that there are definitely many verses in the Quran that imply free will. I think that's absolutely clear. There are verses.
So
in the Quran
that would be
seem to
the
imply
earliest.
otherwise, but-
That would be the earliest Muslim view.
Right.
The Quran itself would be the earliest Muslim doctrine.
I definitely
about-
agree with that as a principle. Again, the Quran seems to have a mixture of both. I think there's definitely more verses that imply free will,
see.
but it's difficult. But I wanted to show you this. This is the sort of thing that leads me to think that there has to be a strong form of predestination. This is Sahih Muslim 2:6. What does that say? 2657. Verily Allah has fixed a very portion of adultery which a man will indulge in, and which he out of necessity must commit. The adultery of the eye is the lustful look, the adultery of the tongue is the licentious speech, the heart desires and yearns which the parts may or may not put into effect. Does that not sound like determined?
So I would say it's problematic from the point of view of the Quran, because in the Quran it makes punishment of adultery, and it wouldn't make sense you can punish people for adultery
Absolutely.
if they're just simply
Well, you see, this
if
is
it's
where
been
me and you would differ,
predetermined.
because
Yeah.
I would look at that and say, kind of sounds like there's a contradiction in the hadith of the Quran. But I guess your view, what would your view be?
So the earliest view seems to be like from Abu Hanifa, the Hanafi school. So his view is if the hadith clashes with the Quran, then he would reject it, because the Quran is mutawatir, meaning
Right.
it's
a lot of
multiple.
the hadith are just ahad.
Yeah, singular. Yeah.
So, would you say that some hadith in the 6 books of hadith are possibly wrong if they go against the Quran?
Everyone says that. Yeah.
Well, I've met others that don't.
So you said 6. So
Yeah.
so
Sahih
even
Muslim, Sahih Bukhari,
yeah.
yeah.
So even the Salafis accept that. With Bukhari and some, or even with Muslim as well, they regard them as being pure.
Yes.
But when it comes to the other collections like Ibn Majah, Abu Dawood, and Nasai, so even the Salafis would accept that they may contain hadiths that are erroneous.
Oh, absolutely. That's because they actually grade the other ones, right? So Sahih Bukhari is all Sahih, like by his
Yeah.
standards. Same with Muslim, but Al-Tirmidhi, that's just his book. So he grades them, right? Well, him and maybe others like Al-Albani in the modern period will say this is Sahih, this is Da'if, this is Hassan, this is
Yeah.
So
They're determined by the chain of narrations for the Salafis. For the Maliki school, and also for the Hanafi school, they're judged also by the text, like textual criticism. So based upon like the narration itself doesn't have any hidden error or hidden defect. So like it agrees with the established principles of like in Medina, the city of Medina, or the city of Mecca, and also they agree with the Quran, and also they're not irrational or nonsensical. So for example, the hadith doesn't say like Jesus is the biological son of God, even if the chain is correct, but the content is teaching something that contradicts directly the Quran, then in the Hanafi school it would be rejected, and also in the Maliki school as well. I don't know too much about the other schools, so I can't speak for them. But
can you remind me of? Thank you for telling me this. Can you remind me what your school is? Where you stand on?
Yeah.
Do you hold to a particular school of jurisprudence?
I'm attracted towards the Hanafi school.
Hanafi.
So, yeah.
Would you consider yourself Ash'ari?
Yeah,
in terms of Aqidah?
Ashari, Maturidi, yeah. So, yeah.
But you're definitely not Salafi.
No.
All right. Well, thank you very much for this chat. I
Okay,
really
no,
appreciate
thank
it.
you, Chris.
Thank you for being honest. And
That's okay, anytime. Cool, thank you.
God bless.
Islam.
Yeah, I've been a while. I have my own stuff. Yeah.
Just looking for the cameraman. They gave me the mics, but
Oh yeah.
Listen, Rob, it's a good one. Good conversation to have. Yeah, how's it going?
yeah, good, thanks, alhamdulillah.
Good.
Have you prayed Maghrib, by the way?
Yeah, we did. The second Jamaat parade already.
Okay,
So they're just on the last one because Isha is coming in so fast.
Chris, do you want my phone? Do you have my contact number or email or anything? Like, if you ever wanna contact me or ask me about
You can give me your number if you want. But the
Okay,
thing is, I have a principle that I won't give you my number.
Do you want my email or something?
Yeah, let's do. Yeah. Well, you have my email. Well, my email is just chrisspeakerscorner@gmail.
Okay, yeah,
So
cool.
you can email me whenever.
I'm
Which covenant? The covenant of the prophet or the service?
I'm this one.
Covenant. You know what the covenant is? When it goes to
44 at outlook.com.
extend to mankind a covenant.
Nazam 44
At outlook.com.
You follow his authority.
I'm also on Skype. You can message me on Skype with.
Okay.
chat
I do
or
have
something like
Skype,
that,
but mate, I barely use it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Service after.
Well,
Way to keep in touch. So yeah. Are you still local? Have you moved or moved away or
Traveling a
something?
long distance.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, let me know if you come again. So yeah, cool. Alright, take care.
After you get your covenant. Assalamu alaikum.
What's up, brother?
Hey, brother,
Okay,
you okay?
yeah, alhamdulillah. What's up?
For now it does it.
Oh, hey, how are you?
Good to see you. You know what? Tie them together.